Dr. Danny, was that us coming out of a club I just heard?
It's my favorite song.
I think it's time to have us back.
Welcome back to Cancer Specialist Medical Minute.
With
Let
Dr.
me back up from the mic there. Welcome to Cancer Specialist Medical Minute.
With Dr. Rick and Dr. Danny.
That's Dr. Rick.
And that's Dr. Danny. And I don't know how this happened, but apparently of the 5, I think, listeners we had to the first podcast, there was enough positive reviews to bring us back for another episode. Producer Brenna, do you have any thoughts?
Let's just keep going. We'll see how this one goes. See if we get brought back for 3.
Producer Brenna doesn't like being put on the spot, Dr.
No.
Rick.
That was the worst positive reinforcement I've heard all day. And I have a toddler that requires more positive reinforcement than I just got from producer Brenna.
On a side note, can I tell you a dad joke?
Do I really have a choice?
No, you don't.
Okay.
What did the janitor say when he jumped out of the closet?
I don't know.
Supplies!
So anyway, with that amazing start, Dr. Danny, what are we going to be talking about today?
So we're going to dive into a topic about COVID-19.
COVID-19. I believe I've heard of this before. Is this what we keep hearing on the news?
It's been in the news a lot, and we're going to go into a lot of detail in regards to our patients about how COVID-19 affects patients undergoing cancer treatments and just general information about COVID-19 from our perspective.
I think that's a really good idea. I think there's a lot of information out there about COVID-19, and I think sometimes, even I can only speak for myself, even as someone in the medical field, it can be hard to digest it all, synthesize it all, and try to figure out what's going on, let alone patients who are already vulnerable with cancer. So I think this is hopefully going to be a very informative talk, and Dr. Danny may teach us something today, because I know I need to learn.
Well, I can't believe, we're over a year into the pandemic, and, I can remember coming into clinic. I was working at the Baptist South office at the time, and, walking into clinic without a mask on. Can you believe it? Walking into clinic without a mask? I couldn't even imagine nowadays doing that.
Those were that was the golden era, back when we didn't have to wear masks.
So I remember when it all began and we were hearing on TV about the impact of the pandemic overseas and how it is affecting the United States, and about how everyone should start wearing masks, everyone needs to be diligent and start social distancing. These were all foreign things to us. We had no idea what to expect, no idea how to handle this from the get-go. We were, listening to our superiors. We were listening to the news. We were listening and reading articles and trying to really be well informed for our patients, because our patients had lots of questions, and we were trying to do our best to make sure that they could stay safe, especially our patients who are on different types of cancer treatments. Thankfully now, I pulled out some statistics for you, Dr. Rick. I know you love this. But according to the CDC, and here in Duval County, so over 70% of people above the age of 65 are now fully vaccinated. Can you believe that?
I can. I think that's a pretty impressive number. I would, have guessed it would be lower, but I'm happy to hear it's higher. I think that's a pretty remarkable accomplishment in such a short amount of time.
It is remarkable. And even in St. Johns County, they're now up to about 83% above the age of 65 are fully vaccinated.
Wow, that's unbelievable. And you brought something up, I think, that took me back to last year when the pandemic started. And, I'll be honest, and this is a little sad, but it really didn't hit home for me. There were 2 ways it hit home. One was I was watching the NBA on that Wednesday night when the Utah Jazz game got canceled. And I remember turning to my wife and saying, oh, this must really be a big deal if they're canceling the NBA. And I know that's probably not, what you should be the way you find out that this is going to be a very, serious and important event. But it was. And then a few days later, to keep it local, the Players' Championship, which is arguably the 3rd or 4th biggest golf event of the year that's held every year here locally in Jacksonville at the beaches. They played on Thursday with full sets of fans. And then that next day, Friday, they just canceled the entire tournament. So I think as a diehard sports fan, that's really when it hit me that, oh, our lives are about to change, and this is definitely going to be a pretty wild and interesting year plus now at this point.
Definitely wild and interesting. And I think the thing back when this all started, how it affected families and families being told that, hey, your kid can't attend, the last few months of school. You need to homeschool your children. You need to find a nanny to watch your kids. We, two full-time working parents. I mean, it's been extremely hard on a lot of people. In our profession, we're trying to keep our patients safe. We're trying to keep our staff and ourselves safe. What have been some of your biggest challenges in the radiation oncology department in terms of keeping the patients safe who are coming in for treatment, and also just you guys and your staff staying safe, staying healthy, keeping your families healthy?
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, a lot of healthcare facilities closed down or had limited hours. And, I will say our patients who have cancer, it's not really an option for them to, hey, let's delay treatment of this very serious, potentially life-threatening situation in some circumstances. Let's just wait a few months and see what happens. So we really had to scramble and come up with a way to still see our patients, still provide the excellent quality of care that they expect, but do it in a way that, they could feel safe, their families could feel safe. And the last thing you ever want is a patient to feel like they're putting their spouse or their family at risk because they're coming in to get cancer treatment. So it was a pretty, stressful time on us as a clinic because, number one, the information about the virus sort of was coming out at, a crazy pace where we were learning things that seemed like by the day of how it could spread, how it might not spread. And so at the beginning, we really, obviously masks, we were very diligent about cleaning. We always are, but we just even more so, just made sure that when a patient came in for a visit or came in for radiation, all surfaces were wiped down every time and multiple times. We did temperature checks at the door. We did screening for COVID symptoms. We recommended patients who had, tested positive or screened positive, I should say, to go get tested. So, thankfully, knock on wood, of the 3 radiation clinics that we have, there's no cases of a person being COVID positive that was linked back to it being done in one of our clinics. So it was a blessing it worked out that way. But the short answer is, to your question, it was a lot of just due diligence and a lot of sort of following CDC guidelines, following national guidelines. But at the end of the day, as you probably can speak to, Dr. Danny, a lot of our patients, they don't have the luxury of, waiting or putting off a doctor's visit for a few months to see what happens. This is time-sensitive stuff.
I think that was one of the biggest questions in the beginning is, patients who were either starting a new treatment for a new cancer diagnosis or patients who were on a treatment. What should you do? Should you continue the treatment? Should you wait a little bit until this COVID-19 thing calms down, which obviously in retrospect, that it wasn't going to calm down anytime soon. So, but back then you had no idea, what to do and trying to get some guidance from some of the experts around the country. But I came across an article in the Blood Journal, big hematology journal, and it was looking at outcomes of patients with blood cancers, just hematologic, cancers. We're talking about leukemias, lymphomas, etc. And what they, saw was that patients are at risk of death from getting COVID-19, not just patients who are on treatment. These are patients with any cancer diagnosis, regardless of what treatment they're on, they're at risk, at a higher risk of death. So it wasn't so much a deciding that, hey, should this patient continue their treatment or not? I think I think that if you're looking at a patient and saying, okay, it's crucial that this patient finish their cancer treatment, one, because it's a curative treatment, you should continue that treatment and just take every measure possible to keep that patient safe, wear masks, social distance, no unnecessary travel, etc. And I think This study really highlighted that, that it's not so much the cancer treatment which are putting patients at risk of a COVID-19 related death, but it's the cancer diagnosis itself. So I think that if patients are in need of cancer treatment, if we need to, administer treatment to hopefully cure a patient or to relieve symptoms which are severe, we're going to continue that cancer treatment and do everything in our power to keep that patient safe.
Well, I mean, I think, let's be honest too, part of it is geography, right? If you were a cancer practice in the middle of New York City at the height of the pandemic, obviously, potentially they would have to make different decisions. So I think, the thing is what we did, and I think our group did very well, was what are the statistics, what are the numbers here locally in North Florida, what is the safest way we need to go about doing it, because as Dr. Danny just alluded to, these patients are at risk, and at the same time they need their treatment, because if you withhold treatment, then they're going to have bad outcomes from their bad diagnosis. So it really was I think a very a time that certainly it was very lots of questions were happening, and not a lot of answers were happening. But I think now, even though obviously we're still in the middle of this thing, there's been at least some more established sort of parameters, recommendations, guidelines, and now with the vaccine uptake, obviously, as Dr. Danny mentioned before, locally seems to be moving the needle in the right direction. Hopefully we can get to the point sometime in the future where, we can get somewhat back to the way things were prior to this all starting.
I know Rick wants to go and see a basketball game soon. That's what he's talking
about,
referring
really,
to.
It's really the only real negative of living in Jacksonville is we don't have an NBA team, and it really hurts my heart. And Miami's a long drive away for me to see my Heat, and it's something I can't do every day, unfortunately.
Are you saying you don't want to drive an hour and a half, 2 hours to see the Orlando Magic?
So the Magic are okay. I'll watch the Magic, just not really, not going to get into it. Plus, my sister lives in Orlando. Then I'd have to, see her and do the whole dog and pony show. I'm just kidding. Love you, Kelly. But no, that
Kelly just gave us a 1-star review.
Well, she's listening though.
Just right now.
She's listening though, so that's what's important. Okay, so that's what's important. But no, I think it's. I think everyone's obviously ready to get back to quote unquote regular life, but we also have to realize that the world's changed forever, and some of these things that are happening now are probably going to be in place for a long, long time. And I think thinking otherwise is probably a fool's errand.
Well, I don't know about you, Dr. Rick, but just about every day I'm getting a question about vaccines, the safety of vaccines, what vaccine should I get?
Yep.
Right now, the 2 vaccines that are available to patients are one from Pfizer and BioNTech and Moderna. So I received the Pfizer vaccine. We were lucky enough to be eligible for the vaccine in, I think, late December through one of the hospitals in the surrounding area here. I think that Pfizer and Moderna vaccine both have had good data behind their use and really have shown that they're effective at preventing COVID-19 infection and serious illness related to COVID-19. So what are your thoughts, Dr. Rick, as far as if I were to ask you, if I were a patient coming into your office and I had not received the vaccine yet, and I said, Dr. Rick, I'm nervous. I don't know which vaccine to get. I don't know if it's safe. What would you tell me?
Well, I think it's definitely understandable why someone would be nervous or hesitant to get one of these vaccines. I think there was a lot of different coverage out there in terms of, how can this be safe? It was developed so quickly. It may or may not be using a technology that's on this order of vaccines relatively new, relatively being in quotes because this technology has been around for a while, but really being implemented for the first time in a large scale way this go around. So I think you first, have to acknowledge that people can have a very legitimate reason why they're skeptical or why they may not want to take the vaccine. So I think that's very important. But I think really just to me, and I know Dr. Danny's the numbers guy, so I'm going to be going a little bit against type for me here, but I think you just have to look at the numbers and really look at an individual's risk of getting sick if they contracted the virus. And, that obviously you alluded to earlier are patients who are 65 and older, which comprises a majority of the cancer patient population, or patients with significant medical comorbidities, patients who are overweight or obese, patients with diabetes, patients with other chronic diseases that we know now in hindsight with 13, 14 months of this pandemic now know that those patients are more likely to get sick and more likely to have significant issues and possibly die from COVID-19 if they contract it. So in those patients, I really try to, number one, hear their reasoning for why they may be hesitant, and then two, explain to them sort of what the data shows in terms of the prevention of serious illness from COVID-19 if they get the vaccine. So that's my approach. I don't know. Do you do anything differently?
No, I don't. I want to make it known as well that when we first were vaccinated back in December, neither Dr. Rick or I were forced into getting vaccinated. We made a personal choice to get vaccinated, as well as majority of our peers. I, as well as I think Dr. Rick, probably looked at the studies and just kind of looked at the safety data, which were reported. I believe both of them were reported in the New England Journal of Medicine. This little known journal in the atmosphere here. We did our research. We looked into it. I think the efficacy stands, strong, and when you have a vaccine that's over 90% effective at preventing, viral illness, I think it was more than what people expected when they first came out with the vaccine. I think, Dr. Fauci was talking about it being good if it was greater than 70% effective, or somewhere in that range. But I think, we looked at the data and we decided that it was the right thing to do for us. One, because we are seeing patients every day. We go home to our families every day too, and we have to keep them safe. So I felt comfortable going forward and getting the Pfizer vaccine. I think, Dr. Rick, you also got the Pfizer vaccine as well.
I did.
Johnson & Johnson, now they had a vaccine, and they have a vaccine, I shouldn't say had, but they have been put on a hold or a pause. And, this is scary to a lot of people, especially I know, some of my colleagues had friends that were texting them right away when this vaccine went on hold, and they said, oh my gosh, I just literally got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. What should I do? And, I think my advice is do not overreact to the situation. I think it is scary when you see that these serious adverse events are happening, but they're happening in very, very tiny numbers. And I think that a majority, and I mean an overwhelming majority of people, are not going to get this serious reaction to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And just briefly, it's a bad reaction where platelets become activated and your platelet count can go low, which can put you at risk of bleeding. And this condition also puts you at risk of clotting and getting clots in weird places. And it's just very scary when people hear this, but it is a very rare complication. I think the FDA was actually meeting today or yesterday to review that.
Yeah, I think, today as we record it, when this goes out, this probably, will already be resolved in some way.
Right.
But I think, the other thing that's important to think about is, was a very rare event, but a very serious event, and certainly in a very selected group of people, in young women, I believe. I don't know, Dr. Danny, if you have the ages in front of you of the age.
I don't have the ages, but you're right. A majority were women who had this condition.
Yeah, and I think, to me, what it signals is if you're in that age range, I think it was like 40 to 69 or something like that, women who had this condition, this rare reaction. Well, that's fine. If you haven't been vaccinated yet and you're a woman in that age range, well, of course, then don't get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. But the beauty of this pandemic is we have options, right? And we have the Pfizer
Right.
vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, and I think it's just the benefits of getting vaccinated certainly outweigh the risks. But if you're in this risk group where you don't feel comfortable, the beauty of the science and the drug industry, one of the times where they all seem to somewhat band together to do more for the common good for everybody. You have options to get the vaccine, and I think that's very important. Is that you need to also understand that not all of the vaccines have these very rare but serious reactions.
Right. And I think it's important to note that according to the CDC, as of mid-April, that there's been 0 reports of this condition of blood clots with low platelets with either the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine. So none. And that's in greater than 180 million vaccinated. So again, this condition that Johnson & Johnson has been associated with is not associated with the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. So again, I encourage my wife to become vaccinated, and my father, who's in the high risk group, and I think a lot of us have encouraged our family members to become fully vaccinated. And I think it allows us to feel more comfortable getting together with one another. And that's been one of the hardest parts about this pandemic, is just not being able to see family who you're longing to see all the time.
I think you're alluding to what I think is the most important part about the vaccine, in my opinion. This is just my opinion. The messaging should be that if you are vaccinated, you are protected. You have reduced the risk of your ability to transmit the virus if you somehow still had it. And so I think the messaging needs to be, if you're vaccinated and you're around other people who are vaccinated, you can interact in a somewhat relatively, quote unquote, pre-March of 2020 way. And I think where the messaging has gotten mixed or lost in the constant updates and constant stream of consciousness that every media platform seems to have these days, is we miss that message as to what, because people always ask, well, why would I get vaccinated if I still have to wear a mask and I still have to do all this? Yes, when you're in public and you're around people you don't know if they're vaccinated or not, you don't know what their health conditions are or not, it's just proper to, at this point, wear a mask just for the greater good of others. It's not about yourself who's been vaccinated, it's about others. But when you're around your friends who've all been vaccinated or your family members who've all been vaccinated, that's an incentive to get vaccinated, is you can live a relatively normal interactions with those folks. And I think the CDC is slowly adopting that guideline. I emphasis on slowly. I think recently they said outdoor gatherings and vaccinated people in this specific temperature condition may be okay. But I think we'll eventually get to the point where, because the data is as good as Dr. Danny said, with the two, the Johnson & Johnson, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine, as well as the other vaccines that keep coming along, I think that's really, to me, the take-home message is one of the benefits to really thinking of strongly about getting the vaccine if you haven't already.
And so you all would say that it's safe for the patients that are immunocompromised and in active treatment. There's no, I think a big question we get on, our Facebook and on our contact us form is it going to give us COVID?
Yeah.
And that's not,
I think,
accurate, right?
That's probably one of the most important questions that patients are posing to us is, hey, I'm either on chemotherapy right now, or I'm on a cancer treatment which reduces my ability to fight infections. Should I be vaccinated now? Should I wait a little bit? What's the best time to do this? And so there's many guidelines out there. The National Comprehensive Cancer Network is one of the guidelines that we all use to kind of help with not only treatment decisions for patients, but also supportive care. And they've also come out with guidelines for COVID-19. And really, what I'm using in practice is looking at their guidelines along with looking at ASCO guidelines. And across the board, it is safe for patients who are on chemotherapy, on targeted therapies for cancer, checkpoint inhibitors, which are those immunotherapy drugs, it is safe for those patients to get vaccinated. And what we usually advise patients to do is get vaccinated somewhere in the middle of their cycle. So not, the day before they come in for their chemotherapy, not the day afterward, but somewhere in the middle of their cycle. If they're on immunotherapy, the same kind of recommendation holds for that as well. Have you had to modify any of your recommendations for your patients on radiation treatments?
No, I think in general, what the national societies are recommending, as you alluded to, is similar for radiation patients. And basically, the best time to get the vaccine was yesterday. That there's really no contraindications from a radiation standpoint in the vast majority of cases. And really, we tell our patients that if they're eligible, and now in Florida, I think everyone pretty much over the age of 18 is eligible to receive the vaccine. So, if they're eligible and they're able to get it, we recommend that wholeheartedly that they move forward because, as Dr. Danny alluded to, there is no risk of getting COVID from the vaccine. That's 0% risk of that. So, no, it can only help.
No, that's exactly right. I think, before COVID-19, we were getting that question about the flu vaccine. I feel like I get the flu every time I get the flu vaccine. But the same holds true for COVID-19. You may feel like you have a viral illness the day after you get the COVID-19 vaccine. That doesn't mean you have COVID-19. It just means your immune system's becoming activated, hopefully making all those good immune cells which are going to prevent you from getting an infection. So, and one of the other questions I think that we got posed from patients is, hey, I got the flu vaccine last week. When should I get my COVID-19 vaccine? I was generally telling patients about a month apart from your vaccinations. Recently came across something that said 14 days is fine. I think somewhere between that time, anywhere 2 to 4 weeks after, if you had a recent vaccination, whether that's for influenza, whether that's for shingles, whatever vaccine it was, I think at least allowing at a minimum 2 weeks before getting the COVID-19 vaccine. And these groups are also prioritizing the COVID-19 vaccine. So do not prioritize other vaccines over COVID-19. I think this is the most important vaccine to get.
And I think, one of the other things that at least gets brought up is, well, what can I do to remain healthy or maximize my chances if I were to somehow contract COVID-19? What are the things that you're telling patients, Dr. Danny, about just how they can live their life outside of the vaccine that may, other than masking, social distancing, and following CDC guidelines in that sense? Is there anything you're telling people to do in their personal lives, diet, exercise, things like that?
I mean, definitely. I don't think life should stop and change abruptly. I think the general health maintenance measures should remain the same. I think you can exercise safely. I think the weather's been great actually recently where people can get outside and do some activity. Season allergies are picking up. That's the only downside for some. I know producer Brenna has been shaking her head over here, but we can combat those allergies and keep you active, keep you running, riding your bike, going for long walks, eating well, eating a balanced diet. None of us are perfect. Dr. Rick and I are not perfect in our diets,
Not at all.
but I think we try our best to incorporate, all the good stuff, fruits and veggies, and a variety of different proteins that keep our body strong. So again, doing well a majority of the time. We all are trying our best, and I don't think the activity needs to cease. I don't think the diet needs to cease. I know a lot of people fell off the wagon with their diets during this pandemic, and it's common because there's a lot of stress. People are at home more. A lot of different factors led to people gaining weight and falling off their diets. But I think now's the right time to get more active, get outside. Patients on treatment, I know there's times where you're going to feel tired, where you're going to feel fatigued. We allow for those things and allow for your body to recover to hopefully get more active. And we also, like to see patients in clinic and try to improve upon some of those, cancer-related either the treatment symptoms or if the symptoms are from the cancer, which are limiting your activity level, come in and see us, and we'll work on those things.
And I think it's important too, just to keep acknowledging, one of the biggest risk factors of if you contract COVID-19, of, well, what are my risks of getting sick? And, being overweight or obese or having some of these chronic conditions certainly puts you at risk of a higher chance of medical issues. So even Dr. Danny alluded to our cancer patients, but you have to also think about the caregivers of those patients, the families of those patients. If you're listening and you have a patient or a loved one who's getting treatment for cancer, also remember to take care of yourself. Physical health, mental health, those sort of things are extremely important, because now is not the time to binge junk food and gain a bunch of weight, even though it's very easy to do with a lot of us working from home or less active than we used to be. But it's really important, and I think shines a light on this country's need to really emphasize activity, physical activity, healthy eating, and healthy living, because the majority of these patients who get real sick, unfortunately don't have that, and it's just getting more and more common in this country. So you should never beat yourself up if you're in that situation, or if you feel like you have weight to lose or a better diet to eat. There's never a good time, there's never an easy time, I should say, to make changes, but the best time to make changes was yesterday. So it's starting now, and really sticking to something that you can enjoy, and something you can actually benefit from in the long run.
So, Dr. Rick, I also got asked the question too, should I receive both doses of the vaccine, whether that's the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine? Are there times where maybe I shouldn't get the second dose? Hey, if I've had the COVID-19 infection 3 months prior, if I've, had a bad reaction with the first vaccine, what do you recommend? So, what the CDC says is that for severe allergic reactions requiring treatment with epinephrine or some other treatment, that the second dose should be held. So you should not get the second dose if you have a serious allergic reaction. Also, immediate reactions, which I actually wasn't aware of this until I read a little bit more about it. But patients who had an immediate reaction to the vaccine, within hours of getting it, while either they were still at the facility where they got the vaccine or soon after they left, they actually are saying hold off on that second dose. But by and large, I think there's not great data out there right now saying one way or another whether one dose is enough for patients who have previously had the COVID-19 infection. I get that question a lot. I think it's still up in the air. I've read some articles stating maybe one dose is enough, but again, it's not by any means in the guidelines to do that, or the CDC is not supporting that so far. But again, we get posed these questions all the time, and we do our own research. And again, I think what we're doing is trying to do what's best for the patient, and using evidence that is out there to support whatever recommendation we're making.
I think it's also important that, I think Dr. Danny feels the same way, so I'll speak for both of us. I think it's important to also be humble with this and realize that this data is changing quite a bit. The recommendations change quite a bit. We're learning more day in and day out from the vaccine, from the virus, from how it's, all these things. So I think having that humility is extremely important. And by no means are we saying that we have all the answers. We can only give you the answers to the best of current knowledge and standards. And so that's what we're trying to do. And I think Dr. Danny eloquently has summarized a lot of that information. But it's just important to realize that you can't get frustrated if what you're told is the right thing to do a month ago may or may not be what the data suggests to do this month. It doesn't mean, there's a nefarious or someone's trying to pull something when things change. This is how science is. Science is constantly evolving. We're constantly asking questions and trying to answer those questions. And so I think it's just something to keep in mind, is that what we're telling you now may not apply 6 months from now. It's only really where are we at today. And I think that's just something to acknowledge.
And I don't know about you, Dr. Rick, but do you use the media as your end-all be-all to recommendations on COVID-19?
So if by media you mean ESPN, TheRinger.com, and sports media, then yes, I do use it to be
You get all your information.
Yes.
From them. Yes,
I'll be
yes.
honest, I'm not a big consumer of media, especially television media. I just
Podcast, yes.
doesn't do it for me. I learned mostly from you, Dr. Danny.
I appreciate it.
And so, no, I think, staying up to date in the medical literature is very important for both of us and for any physician, hopefully. And so reading, actual medical journal data is sort of our job with the knowledge that we have, and then synthesizing it and translating it into evidence-based recommendations for ourselves and for patients that's what we're our job. That's what we're here for. And so the problem is when people who aren't supposed to do that or don't have the ability to do that or take whatever they want and say whatever they want, I think it lends itself to a lot of the questions we're being asked on a daily basis is just because of the messaging. And I think so, for me, if it's not sports related media content, I'm not really consuming it. I don't know. What about you, Dr. Danny? You're looking at me like I shouldn't be doing that.
No, I enjoy ESPN a lot. I'm not going to lie. But I don't use them as my COVID-19 reference, as
That's
Dr.
fair.
Rick
That's fair. That's fair.
alluded to. We do our own reading, and again, I think an important point here too is not in our daily practice, but when we do our own research, on topics like this, COVID-19, et cetera, you're going to look at articles, you're going to look a little bit into the media outlets and see what's out there, what's new, because it's hard to keep up. There's new stuff coming out all the time. But most articles which are published, and it's definitely true in our field, hematology, oncology, is that a lot of them aren't practice changing. And so you can't look at an article and say this is the end all be all, this is the new recommendation, because most articles published are not going to change the current guidelines. So you always, like Dr. Rick said, have to synthesize the data, make your own opinions of it too. Read the article, make your own opinion, talk to your providers, talk to your family. We all have to do our part to get through this all.
So we've heard a lot about your favorite sports. Dr. Danny, what do you like? What are your sports? Do you like sports?
I do like sports. Dr. Rick and I, we haven't gone into this yet, but we do fancy ourselves out at the golf course every once in a while. Now, Dr. Rick goes more than me. Radiation oncologists somehow have a little more time than us medical oncologists.
Shots fired, I guess. All right. Okay.
That's untrue. But we do like going out on the course and, swinging and getting our...
Swinging? Your verbiage is...
Swinging the golf clubs?
Okay. Struggling over here.
I think one of you might be the more avid golfer, and don't think it's you, Dr. Danny.
It's not.
Yeah, somehow
As
Dr.
I
Danny
said.
doesn't golf as much,
As
but
I
still
said.
somehow he played in high school, I think, right?
I did play in high school, yeah. Those were the golden days where I had a lot of time and I could go out golfing just about every day, with the exception of baseball season. So, but yeah, no, Dr. Rick and I love going out to the golf course. I think, golf's one of the activities during the COVID-19 pandemic, which has really boomed because it's an outdoor activity. You can keep social distancing, and, we like working on our games a little bit. And Dr. Rick has been working on his game quite a bit this year. He's been really excelling. And have you joined a league already, Dr. Rick? Is that right?
No. I wish I could say I joined the tour. No, I would be a different podcast we'd be hosting if I did that. No, but I think just as someone who was too stupid, unlike Dr. Danny in high school, to play golf when I was younger because I found it too boring and too slow when I was a kid and wanted to play other sports. I'm regretting that decision on a daily basis because I know I would be better if I had. But no, I think to Dr. Danny's point, COVID really has made the game popular. You're playing more often, and unfortunately, I can't rope enough people at our brittle old ages with our breaking down bodies to play basketball anymore or do anything like that, because we'd probably end up in the emergency department. And
I would love to get on the court. I mean, but yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the risk of injury is much higher on the basketball court than on the golf course.
I don't know. I've seen you guys drive a golf cart at the
Touche.
tournament.
you're not wrong.
So-
You're wrong. Again, why are you airing this out again? Told you that in confidence, producer Brenna.
Yeah, witness it
But you know what?
firsthand.
Dr. Rick downplays his game a little bit. I mean, he went from never golfing in high school to now being very competitive and oftentimes beating me. So don't downplay your game, Dr. Rick.
So, do you think you guys are gonna win at the Jim Swanigan Memorial Golf Tournament this year?
So far, we have yet to win.
Can we set
The
that
tournament,
as a goal?
But-
I think there's some sketchy accounting going on in the other groups. You know, for a charity golf tournament, which I know we'll talk more about, but helps benefit the Patient Assistance Foundation that our company does. I feel like there's a lot of scheming going on for a charity event. Kind of, makes you wonder. What do you think, Dr. Danny?
Maybe, Rick. Yeah, I think I think we tried to pull in a little bit more talent to our team.
We needed the talent infusion.
And we were still unsuccessful last year. We wish we had more success than we did, but we're looking forward to another year. Definitely.
I just equate us to the first year LeBron joined the Heat. So we had LeBron, Wade, and Bosch ready to go,
Yeah,
but they just needed more role players around them.
right.
And that second year is when they really took the championship. So I think between me, you, and a couple ringers, we got a shot this year.
We do. We need to.
I'm gonna hold you to this. I'm gonna play this back at the tournament over this week.
We need to strategically pick our team. We need a putter, someone that is one.
Hold on, I want to go back to this real quick. If she's going to play this at the tournament, I'd like to call out all of the groups that I watch you hit the ball, yet somehow everyone's coming in at 20 under par. Seems suspicious.
20 under par is very suspicious. I agree. I agree with Dr. Rick.
Dr. Danny's too meek to say it, but we see you're cheating. Thank you.
Right. And sometimes literally see you cheating.
We're going to have drones this year for the tournament, following all the golfers. It'll be good. But
we're looking forward to it. I mean, it's a great event every year. I think our Patient Assistance Foundation, holds a great tournament. It's for a great cause. The donations that roll in to help our patients are just wonderful. I think it helps the practice. It helps our patients undergoing treatment. Couldn't ask for anything more, right, Dr. Rick?
agree completely. Thanks so much for coming back and joining us for another episode of the Cancer Specialist Medical Minute.
If you have any suggestions on things we should talk about, questions you'd like answered, or just want to say hi, and producer Brenna always wants to say hi, you can email us at medicalminute@csnf.us.
And make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms. Search Cancer Specialists of North Florida on Facebook, and our tagline on Twitter and Instagram is _CSNF. And I still don't see TikTok on here. Interesting. One of these days we'll get there.
Rick and his TikTok. As always, we appreciate you giving us a few minutes of your time and hope you've learned something today. I know Dr. Rick has.
You always teach me everything I know, Dr. Danny. I appreciate it.
Not true, but I'll take it. And remember, when it comes to your health,
Stay informed.
ask questions
And tune in next time.